Hello everybody, it's vanburman here. Welcome to my video today. As you know, Final Fantasy IX was released a short while ago, or yesterday in fact. And I just really wanted to do a little bit of a discussion video about where I think Square-Enix will go from here. So, pretty much, they're almost right at the end of their nostalgia money, I suppose, in terms of re-releasing the old PlayStation 1 and previous games on Steam and on Android as well. So we're almost really at the end of that. There's not too much more for them to do. We've obviously got 10 and 12 to come on PC that they could do. 10 I think will go down pretty well, if I'm honest. I think the reception for that will be pretty good. Especially, if they release the remastered edition that they've got on PlayStation 4. So I'm thinking that that's probably not going to be a massive stretch for them to go and release that. And then after that, obviously they've got 12. Not sure what they'll do with that, whether they'll run with that or not. But that could potentially do fairly well if they release that on the PlayStation and on Steam. But aside from that, I've got to say, in terms of milking their cash cow, now we're coming right towards the end. Now Final Fantasy IX is done and released on those platforms and been released on Steam, of course. They've not really got a huge amount more they can turn to now, which is good. It means they're going to have to start pushing out a bit more. Obviously, we knew that a couple of years ago they were struggling financially, really struggling financially. I'm guessing, I've not seen their accounts, but from what I gather, they probably seem to turn that around. Obviously since then they have re-released a lot of different Final Fantasy games. They obviously realised the power of that nostalgia money, or I'm not sure what you would call it really. So it will be interesting to see where they go from here, whether they will actually release more Final Fantasies more frequently, whether they'll obviously, I presume they will, push down the Kingdom Hearts aspect as well and try and get them out. I know they weren't as big as Final Fantasy, but there is still a big fan base that is linked to that Final Fantasy fan base, and a lot of people who have gone out and bought the Final Fantasy games are more than likely going to go out and purchase the Kingdom Hearts games, I should have thought. So there is that for them. But I think that over the next couple of years, definitely, and I believe we are already and have been for a while, seeing the failings of Square Enix in many aspects. For example, we have a Hitman game that's been released, episodic release. I know if you pay the full price for the game, you get all the episodes in there. Obviously, there will be other DLC on top of that, but them releasing one part of the game, just charging you £11 for the first level map and its challenges, I think is not a particularly good business practice. I think that they saw how well games like Telltale were doing, given obviously Telltale's format, and I think they've taken it incorrectly for the style and genre of games that they were doing. Personally, I don't think that a Hitman game really needs to be episodic. In fact, Hitman game is probably better off more going towards a open world and missions within that world as such, as opposed to being purely episodic playgrounds. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Hitman's a bad game or a good game. I'm just really talking about the business practices. And in regards to Final Fantasy, we'll have to see what they do with 15. I wasn't massively impressed by the sort of things they were doing with 13, but then I was impressed by 13 overall anyway. None of the 3 games, to be honest. But there you go. That's life. Sometimes you don't enjoy a particular game even if it's from a series that you really do enjoy. So I'm not going to criticise them for that. I just think that they've taken the wrong ideas for their IP and tried to implement them, which is not worked out very well. And I think if they continue it over the next few years, we're going to see a very similar situation. They're expecting Final Fantasy, or they want Final Fantasy 15 to sell about 10 million copies. And I would argue that is going to be quite difficult. I don't think they will reach that. I don't think they'll be far off, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they'll reach it. And, well, don't get me wrong, they could do well, and the game could be pretty good. When it comes out, we'll obviously have to, well, I'm reserving judgment until it does come out. and then I will assess it at that particular avenue. But for now, I remain extremely pessimistic about it. I do remain pessimistic about Square-Enix as a company as well. They made some very questionable business decisions since they formed, and hopefully they will learn from their errors, especially with this episodic thing. Obviously, they learned with Deus Ex, so hopefully they will take more lessons on and roll with that way. But anyway, just a few of the criticisms I made from Final Fantasy IX, and I do think that Square-Enix were very lazy in their port. If they're going to charge that much money over the other games, I thought they could have put a bit more effort into it than what they did, and also taking the amount of time to release it from. And well, compared to the Android version, it's pretty unforgivable, to be honest. It is all a bit rubbish. It's all a bit not good enough. And they always say the saying is that you always criticize the things you love the most, and I think probably that just sort of, for me at least, that saying is synonymous with Square Enix. They are the holders of Final Fantasy, and it's obviously developed through their companies, through Squaresoft, obviously now Square Enix. And if you want something to change, the only way it will ever change is by criticizing it, bringing it out, demanding change, and hopefully we will band together and form the same opinion that you do, or take on board points of your opinion. But anyway, enough of me going on about it. I'm glad Final Fantasy IX is out again. To be honest, it was always a bit of a dream to have it on PC. Probably, I would say it's probably better on the emulator, to be fair. But yeah, obviously I can't go outright to recommend that. But no, nevertheless, it is a very good game, and worth your time for the stories and the characters, if nothing else. Anyway, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. I'm not trying really to stir up any discontent amongst Final Fantasy fans. I just really wanted to just give something to think about regarding Square Enix, and just sort of where you think their business practices will go. And it also does draw on to whether, obviously we've got the Final Fantasy VII remake. I don't really know how I feel about that, and a lot of people are very undecided about it, whether you would, because obviously one of the main questions is, are you willing to pay a full game price, as in £40, $60, for each episode of Final Fantasy VII? Obviously, I suppose part of the question would be how many episodes. Well, let's say it's 4 episodes. Do you want to pay £160? 4 episodes? $240? I don't think so. I personally would not be happy with that at all. Especially as they're going to remake 7 on the premise that it's for the fans and basically trying to pay fan service. I don't think that sort of business practices lends itself to that. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you all very soon. Goodbye.